There's something about the start of a baseball season that always brings out strong reactions. And right now, if you're following this team closely, you can feel that tension building. It's not even about panic. It's more about frustration mixed with expectation. Because when you look at the way the schedule opened up, there was a real opportunity to come out flying, to set the tone early, and instead, what we've seen so far feels uneven. Not disastrous, not alarming to the point of sounding the sirens, but definitely not clean either. And that's where the conversation gets interesting, because a lot of people are already debating whether the reactions are too strong this early. 6 games into a season that stretches across more than 160 matchups, it sounds almost ridiculous to draw big conclusions. But at the same time, context matters. When you drop a series to a team that, on paper, you're expected to handle, it doesn't sit well. It lingers a little longer than a normal loss would, especially when the expectation was to build momentum right out of the gate. The reality is, baseball doesn't follow a straight line. It never has. A team can look dominant one week and completely out of sync the next, and that doesn't necessarily define who they're long-term. We've seen strong teams lose games they had no business losing, and we've seen underdogs steal series in ways that make no sense when you look back at the standings in October. That unpredictability is part of what makes the sport so unique, but also makes early reactions feel both justified and premature at the same time. What really adds fuel to the fire is how these games have unfolded. It's one thing to lose, but it's another when the losses feel avoidable, when moments slip away that could have changed everything. That's where emotions come in, especially right after a game ends. The frustration is fresh. The mistakes are still replaying in your head, and it's natural for that to shape the way you talk about the team. Over time, that emotion settles, and the bigger picture starts to come back into focus. Still, there's a fair question that keeps coming up, and it's one that always circles back early in the season. At what point do performances actually start to mean something? When do you stop saying it's just a small sample and begin to believe that what you're seeing might carry weight over the course of the year? Because there's always that balance between patience and concern, and finding that line isn't as simple as it sounds. For most players, there's a general sense that you need a decent stretch of opportunities before you can really judge what's happening. Not just a handful of games, but enough appearances where trends start to form and numbers begin to stabilize. Until then, everything can feel exaggerated. A hot streak can make a player look unstoppable, and a slow start can make things seem worse than they actually are. That's why context is so important when breaking down early performances. But even with that understanding, there's still a point where the conversation shifts. Once you get deeper into the schedule, once the games start to stack up, you can't ignore what's right in front of you anymore. If certain players aren't producing, or if certain issues keep repeating, that's when concern becomes more than just reaction. That's when it starts to feel real, like something that could impact the trajectory of the season. Right now, though, the team sits in that awkward middle ground. It's too early to make definitive judgments, but it's also early enough that every missed opportunity feels magnified. The expectations were clear coming in, especially with the way the schedule was set up. There was a chance to build a strong foundation, to stack wins early, and to create breathing room before tougher stretches arrive later in the year. Instead, the start has been more complicated than it needed to be. And that's where the frustration really comes from. Not just the results, but the feeling that things could have been different with just a few better moments. Because in a season this long, every game does matter in ways that don't always show up immediately. You might not feel it now, but when the standings tighten later on, when every win becomes critical, these early games can come back into the conversation in a big way. At the same time, it's important to recognize that this isn't a team falling apart. Far from it. There have been flashes of exactly what this group is capable of, moments where everything clicks, and you can see the potential that made people excited heading into the season. The challenge right now is turning those flashes into something more consistent, something that shows up not just in isolated stretches, but across entire series. That's the next step, and it's one that doesn't happen overnight. It takes adjustments, it takes time, and it takes players finding their rhythm. Some guys naturally start fast, jumping out of the gate with confidence and carrying that momentum forward. Others take longer to get going, needing a few weeks before everything starts to fall into place. It varies from player to player, and that's part of what makes evaluating this stage of the season so tricky. Because when you look across the lineup, you can already see that contrast. There are players who have come out sharp, delivering results, and making an impact right away. And then there are others who haven't quite found their groove yet. And when those slower starts come from the players expected to lead the offense, that's when the conversation gets louder. Not because it's time to panic, but because those are the names that carry the biggest expectations. At the end of the day, what we're seeing right now is a team still trying to find its balance. The pieces are there, the talent is undeniable, but the execution hasn't fully matched the potential just yet. And in a sport where timing and rhythm are everything, that can make all the difference between a strong start and one that leaves you wanting more. As the focus shifts a little deeper into what's actually happening on the field, the conversation naturally starts to move toward individual performances, and this is where things get even more layered. Because when you break it down, the overall production doesn't look nearly as bad as the frustration might suggest. In fact, when you look at the broader numbers, this offense has been finding ways to generate runs. The issue isn't a complete lack of scoring. It's more about who is doing the scoring and when those moments are happening. But at the same time, there's a reality that comes with that kind of production. It's difficult to rely on those performances as a consistent foundation. When a majority of your output is coming from players with smaller sample sizes, or from situations that don't always repeat themselves, it creates uncertainty. You start to wonder whether that level can be maintained, or if it's just a temporary surge that will level out as the season progresses. That's why the spotlight keeps drifting back to the core of the lineup. Because eventually, those are the players who define the identity of the offense. They're the ones who are expected to deliver over a full season, to carry the team through both the high points and the inevitable struggles. And when they're not fully in sync, even for a short stretch, it's noticeable. It changes the way the entire lineup functions, from the first pitch of the game to the late innings where execution matters most. There's also an element of timing that plays into all of this, and it's something that doesn't always show up in the basic stats. You can score runs, you can get hits, but if those moments aren't aligned with opportunities to shift momentum, it leaves a different impression. That's part of what has made this start feel inconsistent. It's not just about what is happening, it's about when it's happening and whether those moments are being capitalized on in the right situations. And then you add in the emotional side of things, which is impossible to ignore this early in the season. Every missed chance feels amplified. Every quiet performance from a key player becomes a talking point, and every loss that could have been avoided sticks with you a little longer. That's just the nature of the early schedule, where there isn't enough distance yet to smooth out the highs and lows. At the same time, there have been glimpses of exactly what this group can be when things start to align. You can see it in stretches where the offense flows naturally, where at-bats are competitive, where pressure builds on opposing pitchers. Those moments are important because they serve as a reminder that the potential is real. It's not something that needs to be created. It's already there. It just needs to show up more consistently. There's also an adjustment phase happening that can't be overlooked, especially for players adapting to new environments or new roles. Pitchers are testing tendencies, trying to identify weaknesses, and that back and forth is part of the game within the game. Early success often leads to new challenges, and the ability to respond to those adjustments is what separates short-term production from long-term consistency. That's why patience still plays such a big role in evaluating what we're seeing. Not blind patience, not ignoring what's happening on the field, but understanding that development over a season doesn't happen all at once. There are layers to it, phases where things click and phases where they don't. The key is whether those phases start to trend in the right direction as more games are played. Right now, the offense feels like it's searching for that rhythm, trying to bring everything together at the same time. The pieces have shown they can work, just not all at once. Not yet. And when that synchronization is missing, even solid individual performances can feel less impactful because they're not building on each other. It's also worth noting how quickly narratives can shift at this stage. A couple of strong games from the middle of the order a few timely hits in big spots, and suddenly the conversation looks completely different. That's how thin the line is between concern and confidence early in the year. What feels like a trend can disappear just as quickly as it appeared, replaced by a new storyline that takes over the discussion. So as much as there is reason to question certain aspects of this start, there's also a need to keep everything in perspective. The numbers will evolve, roles will become clearer, and players will settle into their routines. The challenge is navigating this phase without letting short-term frustration overshadow the bigger picture that's still being formed game by game. And as this next stretch approaches, the attention is only going to grow stronger around how these key players respond, how the lineup adjusts, and whether the flashes we've seen can turn into something more stable. Because eventually, this early stretch will stop being about small samples and start becoming the foundation of the season, and that shift is closer than it might seem. But before we move forward, don't forget to join our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest news about the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the news, so drop a comment below. Shockwaves are rippling through Los Angeles as a dramatic and emotional claim begins to circulate behind the scenes. Dave Roberts may be on the verge of stepping away from the Dodgers. The phrase reportedly attributed to the manager, "I can't take it anymore," has quickly fueled speculation that something deeper is unfolding within the organization. While there has been no official confirmation, whispers from insiders suggest that mounting internal pressure, clubhouse tension, and the relentless expectations surrounding one of baseball's most high-profile teams could be taking a toll. Roberts, long seen as a steady and composed leader, is now at the center of a storm that few anticipated. Sources close to the situation hint that the emotional weight of recent performances and constant scrutiny may have pushed the veteran manager to a breaking point. Though he has consistently maintained professionalism in public appearances, this alleged outburst paints a very different picture, one of frustration, exhaustion, and possibly disillusionment. Within the Dodgers organization, silence has only intensified the rumors. Players and staff have avoided direct comments, further fueling the belief that discussions may already be happening behind closed doors. Some speculate that this could be a strategic leak, while others fear it reflects a genuine fracture. Fans, meanwhile, are left in suspense. Roberts has been a defining figure in the team's recent era, and the idea of his sudden departure raises more questions than answers. Would this signal a broader shift in leadership? Or is it a momentary emotional reaction blown out of proportion? For now, uncertainty dominates the narrative. But if even a fraction of these rumors hold truth, the Dodgers could be approaching a pivotal turning point, one that might reshape the future of the franchise in ways few could have predicted. That's all for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay up to date with exclusive news about the Los Angeles Dodgers, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We always appreciate your comments and feedback. See you in the next video.